and nobody runs on Pittsburgh. However, you can run on Houston. I like Chris Johnson to have a big week. Clinton Portis versus St. Louis. Listen, here's the deal. St. Louis sucks. There may have never been a worse team in the history of any sport. I mean, there may not. Clinton Portis is good now, all right? Ask me in Week 9, he won't make this list. But now, good. Clinton Portis will light it up this weekend at home against St. Louis. Guarantee over 100 with at least one touchdown. Another bounce-back pick, D'Angelo Williams. Kind of a slow week, at least on the ground. I think he had a few catches, which might have brought him up a little bit in point per reception leagues. But this week, he's at Atlanta, and I think D'Angelo is going to have a bounce-back week. For God's sakes, they're not going to try to throw the ball. Jake Delhomme is awful. All right, wide receivers. Randy Moss at the Jets. Greg Jennings at home against Cincinnati. Brandon Marshall at home against Cleveland. Reggie Wayne at Miami. And Larry Fitzgerald at Jacksonville. All right, Moss. Listen, this guy was one of the reasons I caught an L last week. 11 or 12 catches. He's Brady's go-to guy, obviously. And at the Jets, whose defense looked tough, pardon me, I expect Brady to rely heavily on Randy Moss. And God, I wish I had just one of those guys on my team. Greg Jennings versus Cincinnati. Greg Jennings is elite. All right, Green Bay is at home. Like I said, I love Rodgers this week. I love his number one receiver and his favorite target, Greg Jennings, to probably go over 100 with another touchdown again. Brandon Marshall versus Cleveland. Listen, bounce back week. I'm liking a lot of guys to bounce back this week that kind of let us down in week 1. Brandon Marshall was a week 1 letdown. This week versus Cleveland, Denver's at home. I expect Marshall to get into the end zone. Reggie Wayne at Miami on Monday night. This is a no-brainer. For me, definitely a no-brainer. Peyton Manning was looking for Reggie Wayne all game. 10 catches, 162 yards, and a touchdown. Ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Reggie Wayne is still a top-notch receiver, and Peyton Manning still as good as anyone in the league, so I love it. I love Reggie Wayne this week at Miami. Monday Night Football. That should be a fun one. Larry Fitzgerald at Jacksonville. Listen, another about Arizona will bounce back somewhat, at least offensively, and kind of get everything going and the wheels turning on offense. Their offense just looked bad against San Francisco. I actually think that might be a little more attributed to the fact that San Francisco's better. All right, they're not the same team that everyone beat up on the last few years. San Francisco looks a lot better this year, but I do think that Arizona at Jacksonville, whose defense is a little shaky, I think Fitzgerald has a big game, and I think their offense snaps out of it somewhat. All right, tight ends. Jason Witten, of course, at home against the Giants. John Carlson at San Francisco. Dallas Clark at Miami. Vasante Shienko at Detroit. I might have said that right. And Chris Cooley at home against St. Louis. Listen, Jason Witten will be on this list every week, no matter who Dallas plays, no matter if he's injured, healthy, out with the swine flu, whatever, he's going to make the list. Jason Witten is that good. John Carlson at San Francisco. Carlson, it ended up being the number 1 target for Matt Hasselbeck last week. Everyone assumed it would be Houshmandzadeh going in, but John Carlson, boy, pulled in a lot of passes, scored a couple times. Hasselbeck seems to really like John Carlson, second-year tight end, and I do too. At San Francisco, I think Carlson's going to have another big game. Dallas Clark at Miami, another bounce-back story. Dallas Clark had a disappointing week 1. I know because he disappointed me, but I do think he gets it back together, and especially with Anthony Gonzalez going down, they're going to have to rely on Dallas Clark a little bit more. Hopefully he pulls in 7 or 8 balls this week and scores for me, or you, for us. All right, Vasante Shienko, Minnesota tight end at Detroit. It's kind of easy to see the system here. What good team is playing what bad team? Okay, pencil those guys in. All right, the tight end from Minnesota who is going to just mop the floor with Detroit and embarrass them in front of their families and wives and children. And there's no way that it's not going to be a productive week from just about everyone in Minnesota. So I like Shienko at Detroit. Also, Chris Cooley versus St. Louis at home. Listen, Washington is better than St. Louis. Chris Cooley is one of the best tight ends in the game. He had a good week last week. He had a good season last year despite not getting into the end zone hardly at all. He's going to have a big week against St. Louis. I can promise you that. All right, sleepers and busts. Quarterback sleeper, Jason Campbell versus St. Louis at home. Washington, St. Louis is awful. I'm not, third or fourth time I've had to say that today. Plug Jason Campbell in if you need to. Say if you have Donovan McNabb. You might not be too comfortable plugging in Donovan McNabb this week with a cracked rib. So a guy like Jason Campbell may be available and you may have to run with him. This would be the week to do that at home against St. Louis. I think we're going to have a big week out of McNabb. Or out of Campbell. Sorry. And my bust this week at the quarterback spot, Matt Schaub at Tennessee. Tennessee has got a brutal defense, and Matt Schaub's already dinged up. Right? He had a terrible week 1. I don't expect him to get better. For week 2, it's a tougher draw. All right? It's a tougher matchup. Tennessee's going to be in his face all game, and Schaub may get injured this week. I'll just put that right out there. He may go down. He's about due. All right, sleepers. Sleeper pick running back, Darren McFadden out of Oakland. And he may not be considered a sleeper in some people's minds, but I think that he is. He's a guy every week where you don't decide if you want to plug him in or not. And here's a guy, I like him this week. Oakland's at Kansas City. McFadden got the bulk of the carries last week in Oakland, and he should be able to run wild on the Kansas City defense. So I like McFadden as a sleeper pick. And my bust pick at the running back spot, Steven Jackson. Oh, man, St. Louis at Washington. Steven Jackson had such a pathetic week 1. Listen, the big thing about Steven Jackson is he gets you the yards on the ground, and he also gets you the catches and the yards through the air. You know how many catches he had last week? 0. I don't know that that's ever happened before. No catches for Steven Jackson. Unbelievable. I don't see this week getting much better. They're on the road at Washington. I expect Hainsworth to be, literally in Bulger's grill all day long. Steven Jackson. Maybe, I don't know. It might be time to start peddling the only good player from St. Louis around your league and seeing what you can get for him. I don't know. I'm just saying. He's in a bad spot in St. Louis. They can't even get him the ball on one pass. They can't even throw him one pass. I'm telling you, that's bad. That's awfully bad. Wide receiver sleeper. And after week 1, may not be such a sleeper. Santonio Holmes, Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh's at Chicago. Chicago looked a little sketchy on defense last week. I know they were in Rodgers' grill quite a bit, but they let a huge play go at the end of the game, and now Urlacher's out for the year. I know he's not going to be the guy covering Holmes anyway, but it's kind of just throwing things out of whack, and I'm not getting a good feeling about that Chicago defense. They did look really good in parts of that game. Let me put that out there. Let me rephrase, because they weren't just awful. They were giving Aaron Rodgers all he could handle, to be quite honest with you. But when it came down to it, they let big plays go. And they let one huge play go. Anyhow, I like Santonio Holmes. It seemed to me like that Pittsburgh-Tennessee game, and, I'll say this, that Tennessee's defense, way better than Chicago's. All right, way better. So, if Santonio Holmes can come out and have a big week against that Tennessee D, I think he's going to have a nice week against the Chicago D. Yep.